Hello everyone, this is Editing Jonathan here. I just wanted to give a quick warning about some issues we had during the recording. I unfortunately forgot to press record the second our discussion started, so when the recording does start, that is the middle of our pre-meeting check-in. You'll hear a couple of people share their answers to our icebreaker question. And one of our members did have a little bit of connectivity issues, so he does come in and out at times towards the end of the meeting. But hopefully those issues are not too annoying and you can still enjoy the recording. If you would like to join our club, our link to join is in the description, so please go ahead and do that. Thank you so much. Happy listening.
I got to just like hang out like at a state park and read with her for the afternoon. And that was just a really good reset, a good reminder of like the things that are actually important, the things that really make me happy that I may have been ignoring in the moment. But that's it for me. And only one person left, but I'll popcorn to you, Publio. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. That's right, Publio. If it's easier for you guys, you can call me Bino. That's kind of nickname from my family name for Bino. And he, him. Yep, definitely. And favorite moment of 2023 must have been when I had the chance to visit Cuba, and in April, my partner and I spent 10 days there, and they were very, very insightful, very interesting, and yeah, unforgettable, I guess. Very, very special.
Nice. That's great. Okay, so we can go ahead and get into our discussion. What was everyone's thought on the book? Wait, I should ask first. Did we all finish the book? You did? You did? Did you finish the book as well, Michael?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay.
So a couple of hours ago,
actually. Oh, you did? Nice. I finished mine like super early January, and I've just been like waiting in my apartment to share for 3 weeks, but so that's my chance. Okay. What do we all think of the book? I can go first. When I first read it, I gotta admit, I didn't like it at all. I didn't really understand majority of the choices by the author, particularly the way the characters speak. There's like an overwhelming amount of cursing, and I just didn't feel that was realistic. I'm not someone who's shy of cursing, but I don't curse in like every sentence, and I don't know many people who do. So that for me didn't make much sense. And as I began to read, I have to be honest, I guess I was triggered because I found myself like almost hating Mike. Then I had to remind myself like he's not your ex, like this is a whole different person. And then when I got to his part of the book, his perspective, I was like, ew, gross. But then I moved on from those feelings and I was like, okay, he's not a bad person. He's just going through something in his life. How did everyone else feel?
I guess not exactly about the cursing. I realized there was a little bit too much of cursing, but there was something about the dialogues happened, and I had the impression that you could see somehow the author throughout in each character. It's not that somehow, yeah, there was each and every character very well designed, but there was in the background I could hear the author speaking. There was this style in their dialogues were so I don't know, there was something I maybe I don't know if I would be able to express that even in Portuguese, which is my mother tongue, but they were too snappy sometimes and too like
too sassy.
There was, say it again.
Too sassy.
Not quite the word I wanted, but yeah, that fits too. Yeah, there was something unnatural. I don't know about the way the dialogues to happen. Even though I liked it, it felt unnatural many times.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought I really want to, excuse me, I really wanted to be supportive of the author, and I was like trying. I thought I actually liked the parts that were in Japan more, and I thought
Mm,
that the relationship between Mike and his father was the most interesting.
mm,
But in general, the relationship was so unhealthy that
yes.
it made me like I feel like I had no one to root for. I was like, good God, I hope these people break up. Like, and I read a lot of romance. I love romance. I read mostly LGBT romance, and I'm just not used to like people being in such an awful relationship, and it just made me sad. And I wanted to be like, don't be with this person, like, Anyway, but it definitely had its moments. At first, I really was not enjoying it, but I sort of liked it toward the end. Um, yeah.
Hmm, okay.
I will just add my general first impression. I don't think I maybe picked up on the cursing you guys mentioned as much, but I definitely got just like a lot of like attitude and resignation from Mike, which definitely I think falls in line with the kind of cursing thing. Like he's just kind of over everything a lot of the time, or just like
Mhm.
trotting through it all. But yeah, I did like as a whole. It was a very relatable story, but I don't know. It's not as satisfying at times as I really wanted it to be. Maybe a little too real or to how things really go. But that's my
Mhm.
overall impression.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. While we're on the topic of the dialogue, I'm curious, did anyone feel as if the perspectives of both Mike and Benson felt way too similar? Almost that they were the same character? I did.
Now that you mention it, it's yeah. I didn't think about that earlier as I read it,
Hmm.
but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And maybe that's what I felt during the dialogues. It's as if they were not very different from each other. The
Hmm.
way they
Hmm.
talk,
Hmm.
the words they use, the attitude, yeah, were
Hmm.
very similar.
Yeah. That's why I think the cursing may have got so annoying to me after a certain point because I'm able to understand if Benson cursing is just part of his character's, the way his character speaks. But if they all speak that way, then it seems very strange to me. Um, and then again, when we move into Mike's point of view in Japan, it's almost the same emotions, the same like way that he speaks, the same cursing. It's very similar to where I felt like what was the real purpose of having a perspective of Mike outside of the purpose of taking the story to Japan and meeting Mike's father than just that. You could have had some other way to have that come about. That's just what I felt, I guess.
It was interesting because I listened to the audiobook,
Mm-hmm.
and the author reads Benson's part, and then another
Mm-hmm.
the voice actor reads Mike's part.
Mm-hmm.
And the author, I guess it was kind of flat the reading because he's not a voice actor, and so
Yeah.
with Mike's perspective, I was actually enjoying it more because they had a good voice actor reading it, so I felt differently, but it was literally different voices. But yeah, I feel like maybe if I was reading it, I wouldn't have been able to tell much apart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. While we're on this, the I guess the Japan part of the story, what did you guys think of the relationship between Mike and his father? I know that you said Rafa, you said it was toxic, but were there any other, I guess, things that stood out to you guys in that part of the story?
I I did like the like eventual level of like comfort that we got to see, because right there at the beginning he was almost a little bit like you're not really my son.
Mm-hmm.
But as their time went on, and I don't know if this was maybe more just like end of life awareness from the father, or like actual bonding between the two of them, or like for forgiveness from Mike for whatever he was holding from childhood. But especially when he's talking about like the routine, it was kind of nice to see them actually like getting into some sort of like, this is how we exist together. We're defining what our interaction, our relationship as father son is, no matter how long or short that is.
That's a really great point. I guess that comes up for me when I was reading the portion of the book where Mike's father is deciding to sign the club over to the bar club over to Mike. I thought that was like a last ditch effort to, I guess, patch up a lot of the things that happen in their lives. We're not given very much detail outside of the fact that, his father was at times abusive and of course left them in America. But I guess that's kind of meant to patch things up and to give him a sense of security in case he does want to come back to Japan and live where his father believes his home is.
I really like ensemble casts, I guess, in books.
Mm-hmm.
When I got to learn about all the patrons of the bar, that's when I kind of started to enjoy it. I really liked that, and it was interesting to see like the relationship the dad had with the patrons of the bar versus his own child. And I think that like I think they had not a good relationship, but it was at least interesting to read about. And it's interesting because if you ever had like an older relative die, a lot of times you have to like reckon with like they weren't really a great person, or like they may not have been like the best this to me, and you have to reconcile that with also being like, I'm gonna miss you when you're gone. So I thought that was sort of interesting to see, because I feel like, I don't know, maybe other people have really nice families, but for me, like when people, for me, my family's complicated, so there's a lot of like I have to reconcile who you are with also saying about you.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, I feel like with the different bar patrons coming in every night, that to me almost felt like a play, like a stage play, as opposed to a book. And yeah, I thought it was very interesting too. Good point. What did everyone think of the Mike's father's decision to name the bar after his ex-wife? I thought it was kind of strange, especially because they don't seem to have a relationship at all. I understand maybe in a way it's him honoring her, and they also didn't meet in a bar, I guess, or their first date was meant to be in a bar. But it just seems, I don't know, so out of place to do for someone that doesn't even speak to that same ex-wife anymore.
I don't know. I thought that despite everything, deep inside, he did love her somehow. He just didn't know how to express love, not towards her, Mitsuko, and his son as well. Sometimes I thought, well, maybe love is there, but people being people, sometimes they just don't know how to express it, and mess everything up.
Yeah.
I did have a question. I was curious to see what anyone else thought. I know we not about the name of the bar, but we mentioned him leaving the bar to Mike. Was anyone surprised that it didn't go? I'm blanking on the guy's name, but the other guy that works there. Was anyone surprised that the father didn't leave the bar to him instead?
And in some ways, when I first read that, I was, but over time I realized I wasn't, because the other character, I also forgot his name, he is not really shown as being someone who's incredibly, I guess, smart on his own. It's almost like he needs some sort of guidance. Even if the guidance is very hands off, he needs someone there to watch him, or else his issues, I guess, will come up. So I wasn't really shocked. And again, I still believe that was an attempt to patch things up between the father and Mike, leaving the bar to him. Mm-hmm.
I wonder how surprised the father was when his son showed up in Japan. I don't remember this being mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in the book?
It is in the book, and from what I remember, it's just like he doesn't even know where the father lives. He's just like looking around for him and asking around. He eventually finds the apartment as his father is leaving for work, and his father just is like, "Okay, put your stuff down and come with me," and that's pretty much it, from what I remember at least.
Because had Mike not gone to Japan, I guess he would have left the bar to this guy whose name we all forget.
Hmm. But interestingly enough, I think maybe he would have still left it to Mike because the father kept hounding on Mike about returning home, and his idea of Mike's home is Japan. So I think that's another way to kind of at least entice him to stay, if not force him to stay, by giving him a bar in Japan. Hmm. Do we all think that Mike keeps the bar, or do we think that Mike lets the bar go?
I kind of get the feeling I don't know, maybe I don't understand these people's decisions. I feel like he
Yeah.
keeps it. I feel like also there's like quite a lot of domestic violence in this book.
Yes. Yeah. Hmm.
And it makes me kind of think of like generational curses. Like
Hmm.
there was like Mike's dad was abusive to his wife, and then like Mike is not in a very healthy relationship of how like those things are passed down. So like generational curses are passed down, but like also wealth too. Like he's like, well, you've gotten unhealthy relationships from me, but also here's property and maybe a legacy. So
Hmm. Yeah, I guess the book has an open end. You don't really know exactly what happens, except we do know that Mike is at least planning to go back to Japan for some reason or another. I would say that he probably tries to keep the bar. It doesn't seem like he would let it go, not even for his father, but it's mentioned several times in the book that Mike really values community, and he really is looking for family and a lot of other people. One of those examples being his neighbors in Houston, and how in tune with their lives he is, almost to the point to where one of the neighbors' daughters was a bit threatened, like, "Why are you here so much?" So I think knowing how many regular patrons come to the bar, he wouldn't let the bar go, because that is essentially taking away someone's community. And I don't think he would do that. And I'm glad you mentioned the domestic violence in the book, because I mean, it's not shocking. I mean, I obviously read the trigger warnings, but for me, it felt like so, I don't know, it just felt so like unimportant in the story. Whereas I believe, well, I guess this is an issue in same-sex relationships in general, domestic violence, and like, is it a big deal or is it not a big deal? I felt like in the book, it seemed like it was just two guys fighting, not two partners abusing each other. And I wish that was like handled with more seriousness, or at least mentioned more often.
yeah, totally.
Yeah. What do we think about?
Yeah, like
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I wish it didn't really seem like it was handled that carefully. Um, I don't know. And the mom was like, "Y'all should stay together." I'm like, "What?" They put their hands in it. Like as soon as someone put
Yeah.
their hands on you, that's not that's not safe. Like I really didn't see anything salvageable, and I think it's hard, like because if it's not like a like a heterosexual couple, like power dynamics are different, although not always. I don't know. I didn't really think that it was so casual. It was like, yeah, we gave each other black eyes, and I was like, what? And I was like, maybe I've been married for 10 years, so like I can't imagine that happening in my relationship. So I was like, oh my god, this is terrible. So I don't know. It wasn't. It was like, oh, not a big deal. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. Exactly. Did anyone else pick up on that in the story? Okay. How do we feel about Mitsuko being left with Benson in Houston? Which is kind of like one of Mike's big bombshells. He doesn't tell either one of them until it
Yes,
happens.
really, it was insane in my opinion. It was kind of
Hmm.
unimaginable. just like that. I mean, lots of things in the book are maybe like that, not really realistic. Or anyway, yeah, I was really surprised when I realized that was happening. Like, how come?
Yeah, I agree that it felt kind of like really bizarre, but I also wonder, like, did something like this need to happen for Benson to have like a strong storyline while all this was happening? Because without her being there, is just like Benson falling in love with Omar and then Mike comes back and leaves. It's not as like I don't know. It adds a lot for Benson to go through while Mike is gone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I just think it felt totally like inconsiderate to all parties, to just kind of like drop that bomb before you leave. I also felt as if I was expecting Benson and Mitsuko to build a sort of bond or relationship. And I guess in some ways they did, but it never really happened the way I wish it would have. I guess I was looking at her as being almost like a fairy godmother sort of character, and like that never happened. So I was disappointed, but yeah, it was definitely insane to leave them all together like that.
I didn't really understand Mitsuko's choices, and also I feel like she could have been more fleshed out. Like, why did she stay in Texas, and then why did she leave as soon as her son got back? Like, she could have gone back to Japan and spent time with the son and the dying dad, or she could have stayed in Texas while the son was there. It's like she didn't actually want to be. I don't know. It was so weird. It was so confusing.
Yeah, that for me, I guess in my mind, I just explained it as Mitsuko leaving Japan was her running away from having to be around the ex-husband so much. And I think that Mike's decision to go to Japan, while he did say it was for his father, I do believe it was more so to escape Benson and escape the inevitable ending of their relationship. Because they don't really talk much, and when they do talk, when he's in Japan, it's not about their relationship. It's just very like surface level. How are you doing? Send me a photo of your sky, and like that's it. When there are much bigger issues, they both have to discuss, and they both know that. So I think he left to escape that. Did anyone feel like at any point in the book, whether it be the beginning, towards the end, did anyone get any sense of purpose why Mike and Benson were together in the first place? I didn't.
Why they were together in the first place?
Yeah, like what essentially brought them together?
Mm-hmm. They were deep questions, Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm loving this. Yeah.
I guess I feel like my first thought was that they bonded over their shared trauma. They both come from very like familiar backgrounds. Obviously, Mike was more poor while Benson had more money, but still their family structure was the same. They had abusive fathers, whether it be emotionally or physically, to their mothers and to them. And then fathers who left. Well, I guess in Benson's case, the mother chose to leave, but parents who left. And as I went along, I sort of lost that idea and I began to realize I think they're both just kind of going with the flow. I think that Mike has a lot of insecurity around his weight. So therefore, he feels like many people don't want him. He may not have many options to date. And we know for a fact, based on the things that are told to us in Benson's point of view, that he has a lot of insecurity around being HIV positive and feeling as if he has no options to date either. Because as I read a line in the book, and I'll read it now to you guys, Mike says, Ben moved in with me a few months after we started fucking, but Mike never says dating. He always refers to what they were doing as just sexual. But then Benson calls it dating. And I thought that was just like so telling for the perspective of both of their sides of the relationship. Yeah. And that even goes back to Mike wanting to open the relationship up. In his mind, it's not a monogamous sort of thing. It's just a physical thing. And I'm letting you know I want that same thing with other people as well. Yeah, that makes sense. Anyone?
No,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It does. It does a lot, actually.
I kind of thought what brought them together was like their acceptance of what they thought make themselves unworthy. Like Mike was insecure about his weight, and then Benson was insecure about being HIV positive, and they both had like positive acceptance of that. So it was like, okay, well, yeah, I didn't really. There was nothing else in common that I could find.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. I don't know that I necessarily made the connection about those specific insecurities, but definitely did think that, like, you know, it sounds like they've not really had anything that's been like really groundbreaking in the romance and dating realm, and they just are kind of like, oh well, like it works well enough, or like what we need to get by is there, and there's like no hard reason to give up, and maybe they don't have a lot of examples. It doesn't sound like they do from any any point in their lives really prior to this, of like how they might see themselves in this situation. So when you don't necessarily have that, you just you take what's there.
That's what I think kept them both to stay. They thought there were other options, especially with Benson. I noticed the most. Every potential like romantic partner or sexual partner he meets, he mentions up front, I have HIV, which of course that's something that should be shared. But the way he mentions it is almost like he's expecting a rejection. And that same rejection, I believe, comes from his parents rejecting him when he told them he was HIV positive. He was kicked out of the home. So I guess that he carries his weight around thinking that is like the death of all relationships, telling your partner that you're positive. Which I guess when he met Mike and when he met the other character's name, Omar, right? The other guy. When he met those two, he realizes it's actually not what's going to make someone leave you. Or a lot of people at least won't leave you for that.
I guess you're right about that. Yeah. When he realizes that he's accepted and loved, he grabs on to whoever's there. Yeah.
Yeah. Just going over my notes. Give me just a second. I also have to say the story to me felt a bit surface level. I became very annoyed early on. A lot of the conversations between the characters that are meant to be a bit more of a confrontation, they're talking in such roundabout ways. They're never really saying what I, as a reader, I guess, know needs to be said to move past this pain. And instead, they will pretend to be arguing about something like the eggshells being broken, or why are you here, sort of in the morning. But it's like the reality is I don't want you here. But instead of saying that, you make it seem like they just talk in ways that are so frustrating, I guess. I don't even know how to say it. But it's like, as someone who I guess can be more upfront, it annoys me when I see people that can't. And yeah, that really bothered me in the story.
I guess what you just said now is somehow related to what I said earlier about how the dialogues happen. Yeah, I guess, yeah, that's also what I felt. The confrontational attitude almost all the time. We're just trying to what? To outdo each
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
I'm smarter. I'm fine. I know I can't express what I'm trying to say here. Sorry, guys.
It's okay. Yeah, I guess now that I'm thinking about it, the best way to describe the entire book is just passive aggressive. Everyone is constantly,
that's the word, passive aggressiveness. Yes, that's it.
Yeah, they're fighting about nothing when they really should be fighting about like the big elephant in the room, Yeah. And then, okay, there's a part of the story that I thought was so touching. I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but there's a part when Mike and Benson are about to have sex for the first time, and Mike notices a bit of hesitation from Benson, and then Mike says to Benson, "We can turn the lights off if you want," which made me think, I wonder, is that a usual reaction he gets? Like when people see him naked? Because he does mention that he feels he looks different naked versus in clothes, and that you can't see a lot of his weight when he's clothed. And then, of course, Benson says, "No, it's okay. I want to see you. I think you're beautiful." That was so sweet. Did anyone else notice that part in the book?
Yeah, I remember that part very clearly. That was really beautiful. I thought really it was beautiful. I liked it.
Yeah, I thought that was one of their but only good moments portrayed in the book.
Yeah.
Like kind of the basis. Like they did accept each other. I feel
Hmm.
like they weren't both of them needed therapy. Like both they might have
Yeah.
made a good couple if they had had dealt with their own trauma. But yeah, I thought it was a nice moment for sure.
Hmm.
Did you that sort of reminded me of there's a point in the book. I think it's Mike saying it, but he can like recount how many times they've said I
Hmm.
love you, and it's like
Hmm.
like 6 or 7 times in like 3 years, and several of them were directly tied to them having intimacy, to like sexual relationship, and not necessarily to anything else.
Hmm.
But it makes me wonder if that's like, well, not wonder, but maybe just reinforces that maybe a lot of like why they're still a couple, just because of like compatibility and interest there that they maybe aren't finding elsewhere.
Hmm. I'm glad you brought that up because on that same note, I began to wonder what do they believe love is? Because you think that like hitting your partner is love, you think arguing this much is love. Like I just don't view love that way. And of course those moments were all like early on in the relationship. I'm assuming before the abuse started. But as I was reading that part, I was like, okay, but how can you love someone like this? Like, yeah.
I'm sure. I'm not sure I got what the Michael. No, sorry.
Yes, Michael.
Yeah, Michael said earlier about 6 or 7 times. Is that you're talking about the number of times they said "I love you" to each other?
Yes, and that how I think at least 2 or 3 of them, when he's recounting, were like while they were having sex, or like as they're finishing, and
Was it
that
that many? I thought it was just only once, I guess. But anyway, yeah.
it's been a couple weeks since I finished it. I could be wrong,
Mhm.
but that part did stick out to me, that even once when there's only 6 times is
Mhm.
more than 10%. And it
Mhm.
just reinforced that may be like one of the big reasons that they're even
Yeah.
continuing their relationship.
Yeah. I'm going to be very open now about myself because when I read that, well, I've been in a relationship for 24, almost 24 years now, and I started thinking,
But Blue, I think your mic may have freezed, or your camera at least. I at least can't see or hear you.
I can't either, and it was very very convenient timing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so good
lost him. I
story.
really wanted to know what he wanted to say.
Yeah. Can you hear us, Leo? I'm gonna send him something in chat. Maybe he doesn't know he can't hear it. Hmm. Okay, so I'll continue until he is able to come back on. All I can do is either mute him or remove him from the meeting, and maybe that'll make him notice. But we can keep going until he notices, and then, of course, let him go back to what he was saying. What was I saying? Oh my gosh. Does anyone does anyone remember where we were in the conversation? I don't.
We were talking about how they only said "I love you" 6 times.
Oh, yes. So there is a part of the book, I believe it's 10, and both Mike and Benson are recounting the times they said it to each other. And Michael is right. A lot of them have been through intimacy. I do remember one of the standout moments for me being, it was after Mike and Benson got in a physical altercation at home, and I believe Benson broke a candle, throwing it at Mike. And then Mike steps on the glass, injuring his foot. And then they make love, of course. And as Benson is cleaning Mike's foot in the bathroom, Mike is halfway awake, halfway asleep. But he like softly says, "I love you," which for me was like one of the only times that felt sincere. But okay, I get the love there because it was so nurturing to like pick glass out of your lover's bloody wound. He left. I hope his computer didn't die on us. Oh.
Yeah, it just seems like this cycle, and it's really continued from their parents. Like, how unhealthy. Like, you get to an altercation, and then you like have sex, which I don't know, and then you like it was crazy. It just seems like a very unhealthy, like codependent cycle for them.
Yeah, that again just goes back to my original statement. Is I didn't really understand a lot of the choices made by the author. But I have to say, after reading it, like a week after reading it, I did a little bit of research and I saw some of Bryan Washington's interviews where he actually explains his choices, because I guess a lot of people felt the same way that we all did. And hey, Biblia, you're back.
Sorry,
no
problem here.
That's okay.
There was this power problem for a bit.
Okay.
Sorry,
you were sharing a story. Do you want to continue?
I don't know how far could you hear me?
It was right after you said I have a story, and that was it, I think.
Oh, really?
At least for me, yeah.
So I guess I was talking for like a whole minute.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, I was just saying about the number of times they said "I love you," and I was just being very open here about myself, because I've been in a relationship for 24 years, almost 24 years now, and I actually we are the type of couple who we don't say "I love you," definitely not very often. I don't remember how many times we've said "I love you," like really like looking into each other's eyes. "I love you," and it's been fine. It's really been fine. I don't know. I thought about that while I was reading the book. I thought, oh, yeah, interesting. You got something here.
Yeah, I think the average couple, I mean, I know some couples are very like, they'll say it all every day. But I think some couples don't. It more depends on how you make your partner feel. And I didn't get the sense that either Mike nor Benson felt loved. Whether or not they're saying they love each other, they don't still feel the love that is supposed to be felt by your partner.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That was very clear to me. They never really felt loved, and well, thank God luckily that's not my case.
I want to ask everyone, since the beginning, we're kind of just like, we're essentially walking into like a giant, like toxic, like bomb in this relationship. But by the end, things seem to be a bit more healed and a bit more civil between the two of them. Does that make sense to anyone? Like towards the end, they're more civil, where like towards the beginning, they're more toxic to each other?
I think so. I think part of it too is maybe just a lot of like the outside perspective of how much bigger things are kind of fell into place for both of them in a way that maybe it hadn't at other points in their lives, and that they like had this sort of like, oh, all these other things are going on around us. People dying and being in these like strange situations we're in, and both of them like remembering like, oh, I do have options like outside of this, and the possibility of experiencing those options, and then like making the choice at least to continue engaging with each other in some fashion.
Yeah, that part, I think that being the ending of the book is what kind of sealed my my perception of me not liking the book at all, until I watched Bryan Washington's interview where he says the intention of him writing it that way is you're almost reading a love story in reverse. So it starts off civil and peaceful, and that's the end of the book. And the beginning of the book would be the end of the relationship where it's more toxic and violent and they're avoiding each other so much. Does that make sense to anyone? Does that clear up that decision for anyone?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, for me too. I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I get it.
Can I ask like an existential question about
Sure,
like
please.
queer experience? So a little story time for me. So I'm assigned female at birth. Like I'm a trans man. So I wonder, like for me, being socialized female, being affectionate was like part of my value. And so for me, I think my partner is also assigned is non-binary, but assigned female at birth as well. But and I like everybody. I'm bisexual, but I guess for both of us coming up, like we were seen to like be sweet, be affectionate. Like so for us, we're like very like flowery, like I love you multiple times a day. But I wonder, is it like different for people? Like I don't want to assume anyone's assigned male at birth, but if anyone is like and they feel okay sharing about it, like is that like discourage? Is it like hard for you because like men are not like allowed to be emotional or affectionate or like to how they're like assigned to act in relationships? Is it hard to like tap into that sometimes?
That's a great question. I would say in general, I could definitely see that argument being made for a lot of people assigned male at birth, men not being conditioned to be as affectionate as women may be. In my case, I am assigned male at birth. I identify as cisgendered. I don't have it. I don't have an issue being affectionate for my family. I think it's more of a me thing. My family has always been very affectionate with me and my father. We'd say, I love you all the time, kisses on the cheek, kiss on the forehead, hold my hand across the street, that sort of thing. I was never really like, I guess, forced to be hyper masculine to make him happy. And he was the same way with me. I don't think he would cry in front of me all the time and, let me cry in front of him. It's just, I guess for me, it feels almost inappropriate or strange to like say I love you all the time. But I guess in my family as well, we showed our love through action. Like, for example, one of the greatest examples I can think of right now is like instead of saying I love you, I may ask you, do you want anything from the store? Or I'm going to go to your favorite restaurant. What do you want me to get you? That's I love you, but I'm not saying I love you, if that makes sense. Or like my grandmother will say, make sure you put on your seatbelt. That's like I love you in her way, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I will add that I'm also assigned male at birth, identify as a cisgender man. But when you mention this sort of like being conditioned to be affectionate thing, I tie it less to that, and I think more to cultural norms. And like in like even in my own experience growing up in an American family and an American Black family is definitely not like as a male, in my family at least, and part of this too could also be like the type of area I grew up in, but like definitely not like super affectionate behavior encouraged from boys or men in any fashion. But I could see, I don't know a lot about Japanese culture, but it does, from like outside perception of what I understand, feel in many ways very like, like men have like this sort of like expectation of, like the traditional like caregiver businessman sort of thing. And I don't know if that plays into the same for Mike, and if maybe there's some sort of like cultural thing for Benson too, if we're like tying it back to the book. But it's a good question. Thank you.
And I guess just take it one step further, like in my family, I wasn't pressured to be hypermasculine, but as I got out in the world around like schoolboys, I felt that pressure, I should say. And that, I guess, that dictated how I showed like my male friends affection, or if I did at all. So yeah, that's a really good question. It makes me go back and look back at my childhood, like I'm in therapy or something. Thank you.
Yeah, I really count my lucky stars that I wasn't assigned male at birth, because my family is Puerto Rican and very even more traditional and more hyper masculine than other families. I met other Puerto Rican families who are very accepting and a lot cooler. Mine is just very traditional and not, my parents weren't very nice. So my brothers were, oh my gosh, all the like sensitivity was like beaten out of them. Like my younger brother was a really good dancer, and then he wasn't allowed to dance because that would make him gay. He's not gay. I'm the gay one, but my older brother, he used to like to like in secret play Barbies with me, and then he got like he got whooped for doing it, and so like all of their like tenderness, and now they're assholes. So sorry for the curse word, but like all their tenderness is like really beaten out of them, and so like I really count my lucky stars that like I don't know that like I got to be a man later, because I don't think I would have had a very good experience. But it's interesting like how culture, like I think many other Puerto Ricans are a lot more better with like just like accepting different parts of who you are, but my family was like very traditional.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that makes me think of the reasons why I believe both Mike and Benson's fathers were so hard on them. I think that it comes from a place of fear as two people of color coming to America, and of course Mike's family being immigrants coming to America. You want to be taken seriously, and you want to know that your children will have a good future. And I think that Mike's issue with his father is that Mike is too feminine and like maybe not serious about business. He's more worried about being social. And it seems as if Mike's father takes business very seriously. And he worries that his son does not. Like he calls him, excuse my language, he calls him a faggot like every 5 minutes. So I'm like, I don't really know if he's accepting of Mike, but I do believe that Benson's father is more accepting. I think he's just, he's afraid of his son having HIV. Benson's father would have, of course, lived through the AIDS epidemic, where AIDS was a death sentence. So I think he carries a lot of that fear with him. And I think that he's also upset with Benson because Benson doesn't take work very seriously. He's comfortable just being a like after school teacher / nanny, as opposed to like taking teaching seriously the way that his father did, being a sub, or even being on the news, whatever. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Like the sense of beating the softness out of your boys to toughen them up for the real world. Okay. Bryan Washington, the author, says that he feels food plays a very integral role in the story. Do you believe it plays such a big role in the story?
Sorry, who?
Food.
Food.
Yes. I originally didn't notice it, but looking back, we were also just talking about how often they say they love each other. I think food is a great way of showing the love to one another, especially because Mike is the one preparing all the food. And then when Mike is gone, Mitsuko is doing it. And then even every time the families come together, there's some sort of food that someone is making. I don't think they ever really, like Mike says that his father never allowed pre-made food in the house. The only time they would eat food not made by them was at a restaurant. So I guess that was the way he showed his love to his family, by cooking for them, which is another way of obviously providing for your family as well. Mm-hmm.
I definitely did notice a lot of like food talk or food discussion. One scene in particular that stood out tied to this for me was when Mitsuko made like the like seafood stew or something, and Benson was going to leave to see Omar. And I don't know, in my mind when I'm reading, I felt like she knew what Benson was doing, or at least knew that like Benson was going to see another man that's obviously not Mike, because Mike's not in the country. And she still like gave him this food, and that was a little, for me, like definitely put put in perspective for her, you know, maybe this affection that she does have for Benson, and how he's at some level caring for her through all this, and she's maybe doing the same. But then Benson, not even, I don't think he ate it, right? He left it for Omar and the little boy to eat, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like he knew it was like the wrong thing to do or something. But that was an interesting scene too, or scene. It's not a movie, but an interesting little piece for me to digest.
Mm-hmm. I think that throughout the whole story, I guess I felt that like Mitsuko and Benson never really formed a relationship. But now that you brought that up, Michael, I guess they did, because she was the one making all the meals. And it wasn't like she did it with an attitude or did it begrudgingly. She seemed to be happy to cook all the meals. Well, she also knew Benson couldn't cook, but so I guess she was the only option, but she seemed happy to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people express emotions through cooking. Similar, Michael, people do that a lot too. And like affection, love, apology, a lot of messages are like conveyed through food.
This aspect of food in the book was definitely very interesting for me because, interestingly enough, I started cooking this year, like 23. Maybe that should have been one of the best moments of 2023 at the beginning of the year. Because I've never really cared about cooking. I actually despised. I hated cooking. I didn't even like being in the kitchen. But something happened last year. I don't know. Something clicked, and I decided to try cooking something I really love, and I loved the result. And then I just kept going, and surprising many people around me, myself most of all. And then while I read the book, I thought, well, I understand these moments here while they're no cooking. There is this moment when I can't remember exactly when. It's Mike and Benson, and it's the first time they cook together, and I think Benson says that it's he points out that they've never done that before, but somehow there's this chemistry, there's this dance going on around the kitchen, and somehow I thought, oh yeah, I think I know what it's really nice. Cooking is something magic, and I'm sorry it took me so long to understand and to love it and
Yeah, I think that cooking I've always been told it's a labor of love. So I guess in a lot of ways, for most of the characters, food is their love language. It's how they show their love and affection for each other, by making food for them. Okay, now that we brought up Omar, what did everyone think of Omar? Good thoughts, bad thoughts.
I, like some other things at the end of the book, that were left hanging. I thought, what's going to happen? I don't know. I would like to hear from you guys. I really don't know.
Honestly, I loved him. Like the second we met him, I was like in love with that character. I thought he was just so nice, and he was like such an opposite of Mike. And I guess I really wanted Ben out of that relationship in general. So anyone that comes along, please just leave. But yeah. Do you guys see Mike and Benson Mike and Benson? Do you see Omar and Benson having a future together?
I was
I feel
actually
like
wondering if the three of them would have a future together.
Oh.
I know. Okay. So when he it was so weird when they like not weird, but like I was so curious as to why Ben and Mike. I mean, Mike and Omar. Mike wanted to meet Omar. I was like, I thought that too. I was like, is it a throuple or something? Like, what's going down here? But I think it would be kind of nice. I kind of saw like a little family unit with like Mike and Omar and Ahmad. I thought
Mhm.
the relationship with Ahmad was really cute. So kind of like rooting for that, for them to be like pseudo parents for Ahmad.
Did you
That is-
guys think it was like weird at all for Benson and Omar to be having this sort of like romantic bond and like building this relationship over sort of like over taking care of Ahmad? It felt I've been a daycare teacher and I just am thinking like how strange it would be for me to be in that position. I don't know, just it was a little strange, but I do like Benson and Omar together. I don't know, like it's because as Jonathan mentioned, just please Mike and Benson break up, and I really wanted them to be with the other people they met, but
Yeah, I think the relationship, at least for me, between Omar and Benson, felt a bit inappropriate. I don't think it's ever appropriate for a teacher, daycare teacher or not, to date a student's parent or a guardian. Um, so that struck me as weird, but I do like that at least sometimes they would take Ahmad into it as well. Like, okay, let's go out all together, not just me and you, and leave him here by himself, you know? Um, Now that we brought up Omar, I think we have to bring up the guy that Mike meets. I can't remember his name, but how do we feel about him? The
I guess
customer, not the coworker.
his name is Tan. I think Tan, something like this.
Was it Tan? Oh,
I guess, yeah.
do we like Tan?
I don't know what to say about Tan. There was not much shown to us about him,
Hmm.
and whatever was shown was not very substantial. I don't know.
Hmm.
I was surprised that Mike didn't like fully hook up with Tan because it seems like he cheated in the past.
Hmm.
So I was sort of surprised why he held back this time.
Yeah, I think it seemed to me that he began to, I guess, over the course of him building a bond with Tan, he began to realize just how much he prefers Mike Benson. And I think he didn't want to cheat this time. He realized that he'd much rather be with Benson. But on the offhand of that, I think he was also accepting the fact that he and Benson were done because it looks like Benson wants something else. Um, but yeah, I kind of like Tan as a character. I don't know if I'd say that he and Mike would have a good relationship, but yeah, I don't know. If we brought up Benson's lover, we had to bring up Mike's lover too. So okay, so since at the end of the book, it looks like it's pretty clear that Mike and Benson need to and want to break up. So, how do you feel about Mike asking Benson to move to Japan with him?
That's the big question, because you said that there's this need they to break up, but I was not really sure. I couldn't. I was totally unsure about what was going to happen. I
Hmm.
didn't really feel they were necessarily going to break up. Uh, and I don't know. Actually, I don't know if I'm moving myself too fast here. At the airport, I was really puzzled about what his mother, Mike's mother, whispered into his ear that made him bawl. I don't know if you're going to get there. Sorry.
I forgot about that. What was it?
We don't know.
Oh, it's just a
We don't
secret?
know. No, yeah, it was like we well, I, if there was something there, I missed it. She leans onto him and whispered something, and he bawls, and he just, and then go, and then Benson says that she's gonna do the same. She leans and she's ready to whisper something, but actually she kisses him on the cheek. But I don't know what happened there.
I think maybe, well, with the context of the point of Mike asking Benson to move with him, maybe she was saying, let Benson go.
Yeah, really. I don't know. Somehow I had the impression that Mitsuko wanted them together, wanted to see them together.
I don't think so, simply because before we get to that part of the story, Mitsuko has a conversation with Benson where she says, like, Mike is not really good at listening to what people need. So he does what he assumes you need, and what he assumes is the right decision. So he's possibly asking Benson to move with him to Japan because it's the right thing to do, it's the nice thing to do, but it's not what either one of them really wants or need. And because Mike hadn't had any sort of conversation with Benson about moving to Japan prior, it's like he's again assuming what Benson needs or wants, as opposed to asking him what he needs or wants.
I feel like at the end of the story, Benson kind of goes farther away from Mike, and Mike kind of goes closer to Benson. Like, I feel like Mike realizes that he's in love with Benson, but I don't know if he's ever going to be able, even with Tan, I don't know if he's ever going to be able to have a healthy relationship until he kind of deals with his own issues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
I don't know. I wasn't convinced that they should or shouldn't break up. Maybe. Well, this definitely was one of the parts that was really dissatisfying to me because I wanted to know at the end what was going to happen. But you know, that, I mean, actually probably made it better. But I don't know if the asking to come to Japan was more of just like doing the right thing, or him actually wanting to like put in some sort of effort, especially seeing, I don't know, kind of the change or different perspective that they approach each other in the relationship with as the book goes on, because it's so different at the end than it feels very different at the end than it does at the beginning and in some of the anecdotes that we get.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and that again goes back to a quote I have from Bryan Washington about the decision to leave the book so open-ended. He says he wanted the reader to know that it doesn't matter whether or not Mike or Benson stay together, but that both their lives have been changed from the time period of the book. And that they both accomplished what Bryan felt was the character's goals. He believes that Mike's goals were to learn how to listen instead of assume what people want, and Benson's goal was to learn how to speak up for himself. And I think throughout the book and by the end of the book, we see both characters learning that. At least with Benson. I think Benson really learned how to like have a bit of a backbone that I think his character much needed. What do you all think about that?
Yeah, it's a reasonable conclusion. I think that, yeah, a little bit unsatisfying for the reader, but I get the motivation behind leaving it open ended.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Does anyone else want to share on that? Or? Yeah.
I think we do see Benson have a little bit more like strength in his decision making, I'll say. But like talking about him having a little bit more of a backbone, I'm trying to think through the relationships with his family, which are in the book, but didn't, like, for me, didn't stick out as much as Mike's relationship with with his family, and I don't know if that's just because they're not mentioned as much. Like, we can have the book about Mike and dad, but if there's something there that sort of reinforces that, or that maybe alluding to that I'm not recalling, just because those parts aren't sticking out to me as much. I definitely the part about his dad telling his sister something and not telling him. I don't remember what it was, or telling them separately and not letting them know that he's told both of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there are small examples, at least for me, throughout the story, but I think the prime example of Mike growing a backbone is when his family come to his apartment to kind of like have a discussion with him, and he just like lets loose a lot of the things, not everything, but a lot of the things that he'd been like holding up against them for a few years. He lets them know they're all pretending and like we all should be more honest. It's brief, but I think that definitely shows that like he is now able to stick up to people that for a while he probably felt he couldn't stick up to. Okay. I'm curious, what cover did everyone's book? What book did it? Oh gosh, what book cover did we all have on our books? Because Bryan makes a point as to why the cover is so important.
I have
I'm
mine
sorry, I
in
can't. Oh,
reading,
there you
and
go.
it's the audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it looks like sushi. I kind of don't understand what the cover is supposed to be. It's like someone sleeping on a piece of sushi, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had both the audiobook and the regular one, and the audiobook had what looked like a surrender flag made out of chopsticks, I think, in like a paper bag or plastic bag. But the other one has the cover that Rafa just mentioned. That's I think maybe it's supposed to be Benson and Mike like as a piece of sushi.
Yeah. Yeah, I was the same as Mike. I had, I'm sorry, Michael. I had the audiobook and the physical book. My audiobook, like the two of you, was the two people sleeping in a bed of sushi. And my physical was the chopsticks in like paper bag, plastic bag. I guess, according to Brian Washington, that is meant to be the true cover, the chopsticks and bag. He says that he purposely chose the ambiguity of those two on a cover for a reason, because the reader will see in the cover whatever they think the story needs to be. Like, for example, he says that some people see a plastic bag and chopsticks. That could be an allusion to Mike's Japanese heritage, and that could be their main takeaway. Some people can see a white flag, looking at the story as being one big truce between both characters. And some people will see a sailboat, which can allude to the fact that Mike needs to leave and travel to Japan at the end of the story. And some people can just see a blank flag, which they can put their own community in, implying that the story can, and which is the author saying the story can apply to any ethnic group of people, people with any sexual orientation, any country, because the story is so universal. What do you all think of that?
Yeah, definitely feel that, especially the white flag part. I've seen the cover with the chopsticks and the white flag, and I was wondering if it was like to do with like the finally calling it quits for the relationship, or like is it time to put up the white flag? Is it time to call for truce? So it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree, and maybe I just called myself out on my interpretation, because I definitely called it a surrender flag. If he intends it to be open to interpretation. But sort of on the same thing, I was like, I'm looking at a picture of the cover now. The like, are there similar thoughts about the title? Like, it's called Memorial, which to me, makes me think of death and funerals.
That was another guess.
Yeah, maybe the reason I see the surrender flag.
Yeah, that was another reason that I guess he left the title to be a bit ambiguous as well. It could be the memorial of Mike's father, obviously, or it could be the memorial of the relationship between Benson and Mike, depending on what the reader thinks is the most important death in the story. The death of the relationship or the death of Mike's father. Okay. So does anyone else have any thoughts, questions, concerns about the book that we haven't gone over? I know we kind of skipped around a bit today. None?
I don't think nothing else from me.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fun to talk about it with everybody.
Yeah. I love one of the reasons I chose this book is because it seems to be quite a divisive story. A lot of people have said that Bryan Washington, his writing style is quite divisive. Either you love it or you hate it. So I was curious to see, like, with a group of people who would love it and who would hate it and why. I wouldn't say I hated his writing style, but I didn't love it. Too many cursing words for me, but that's just me. So now we can move on to picking next month's book. Next month is Black History Month, so I have a story, historical Black fiction in mind, written by a Black author, called The Deep by the author Rivers Solomon. Has anyone heard of that book or author before?
Can you say the title again?
Yes, the title is The Deep, and it's by the author Rivers Solomon.
I haven't heard of either, but I do really like the cover of it when I search it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll go ahead and post the link to the description in the chat. You can all take a second to look at that. Okay. And Mike, I know that last month's meeting, you said you really enjoyed the siren story that was in Reclaim the Stars. This book is almost like an extension of that story, so I think you'll like it. Let me know what you both think, and if you wanted to sign for next month.
I do from my just quick reading of synopsis and stuff. I think this one looks really interesting. I'll read it either way now that I know that it exists.
Yeah, it looks cool. I have like a suggestion for maybe the future.
Yeah, sure.
Has anyone heard of this book? Let me pull it up. It's getting like a lot of positive. It's called My Government Means to Kill Me by Richard Mason.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Have y'all read it already?
We haven't read it. It's been on my list for a little bit. Let me pull up the description for that. Let me see. And
I
we can
will
always
say, I
switch
think
up.
it's got like some spicy bits and probably cursing. So just trigger warning for that.
Oh, that's all good. I'm not like a stickler for cursing. It's just in this story, it was too much. But I curse all the time. Trust me. Means to kill me. Okay, I'll pull that up and put that in the chat as well. And we can kind of vote on which one we would rather read. Oh, it's pretty short too. Good. And I'm fine either way, so you two can just let me know which ones you'd rather read.
I'm interested in reading The Deep. I feel like I'll probably read My Government Means to Kill Me at some point anyway, but I wouldn't. I didn't have The Deep on my radar. So it might be nice to kind of read that because I never heard of it before.
Yeah. My Government Means to Kill Me is also in our books we want to read, so it'll definitely come up in the book club at some point, maybe after you get to it yourself, but it'll definitely come up soon. What about you, Michael? Do you have a preference?
I don't have a preference, and I am tempted to say I don't want to make a decision.
Oh, okay.
No, but I do. I mean, I'm going to read both of these anyway. So I'm not picky. It's not going to hurt my feelings if we pick one.
Okay. Well, we can assign The Deep then, since we're all good with that one. Okay. And I was thinking our meeting would be next month. Let me look up the calendar. Towards the end of the week. End of the month, I'm sorry. Which would either be Saturday, Saturday, February 24th, or Sunday, February 25th. Do either one of those dates work better or less for any of us?
I'm fine with either.
Okay.
I prefer the Sundays, but I really enjoy this, so I will make time on either day.
Okay, we can do Sunday. I prefer Sundays too. And does this time work for you guys? 12 p.m. my time and whatever time it is where you guys are?
Yeah, works for me.
Okay. What about you, Rob?
Fine for me.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I'll make... No, go ahead.
I have to jump off because my cat just threw up. But it was really nice meeting everybody.
Of course, nice to meet you too. Hope to see you next month.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Rafa.
Okay, so since you're the last one here, Michael, I'll address you. I'll put us down next month to read The Deep by River Solomon, and our meeting will be scheduled for February 25th at 12 p.m. PST.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, and thank you again, as always, for organizing and doing meetings and maintaining all the stuff on the book clubs. It's very much appreciated.
Of course, and I appreciate you coming so much. And meeting new people, that's fun. So I'm glad we finally have some more people that you can kind of talk to and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was fun. I liked it.
Yeah. Were any of those your friends that you said you would?
They were not.
Okay.
None of my friends that I did showed up.
Okay.
one did read the book, but no one actually did.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no problem. Well, it was so great talking to you, Michael. All of you, really, but Michael's left. So great talking to you, and I'll see you next month, hopefully.
All right. See you next month.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.